Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says Japan will express remorse for its actions during World War II when it marks the 70th anniversary this summer of the war's end. Oil prices continue to fall in the new year, with US crude prices dropping below $50 a barrel. The tumbling prices are also weighing heavily on global stock markets. Plus, an Indonesian Navy vessel locates what appears to be the tail section containing the voice and flight data recorders of the ill-fated AirAsia plane. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's noon Tuesday, January 6th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this Tuesday afternoon. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has pledged to show remorse for Japan's behaviour during World War II in a statement to mark the 70th anniversary of the conflict's end.
Now, attention is being focused on to what level the Abe administration will reflect on Japan's past wrongdoings and take responsibility for its role in the war. Kim Young-gil reports.
Giving his first news conference of the year on Monday, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he plans to express remorse in a fresh statement this year over Japan's actions during the war and its post-war history as a pacifist nation.
Our cabinet will reflect on what we did wrong during the Second World War and on our progress as a peace-loving nation. We will gather our knowledge to bring about a new statement on how to contribute further to the Asia-Pacific region and the world.
As Japan gears up to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of the war on August 15th, Prime Minister Abe said he had no intention of trying to reinterpret Japan's historical wrongdoings.
We will continue to adopt the stance of previous cabinets with regards to the interpretation of history, including the Murayama statement.
On the 50th anniversary of the war's end in August 1995, then Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama said Japan caused tremendous damage and suffering to Asia through its colonial rule and aggression, and expressed a heartfelt apology. There have been fears that Abe will come under pressure from right-wingers in Japan who would like the apology to be repealed. Korea and China will be paying close attention to whether Abe will uphold the Murayama statement. This year has been identified as a chance for Tokyo to rebuild its strained ties with Seoul and Beijing. Relations have been chilled by territorial disputes and Abe's distorted views of wartime history. Watchers say that if Abe sticks to his word and offers a sincere apology, it could present an opportunity for Korea, China, and Japan to build stronger ties this year and create a more peaceful and forward-looking atmosphere in Northeast Asia. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
U.S. President Barack Obama's latest executive order for further sanctions on North Korea has triggered a fresh debate on whether to relist North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. But will this affect the newly found momentum between the two Koreas? Hwang Seung-hee has this report.
The latest U.S. sanctions on North Korea following its cyber attack on Sony Pictures have sparked fresh discussions among lawmakers in Washington.
What happened here is that North Korea landed a virtual bomb on Sony's parking lot and ultimately had real consequences to it as a company and to many individuals who work there.
Some are even calling on President Barack Obama to follow through on his pledge to review relisting North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. Representative Eliana Ross-Lehtinen said in a statement that North Korea should have never been taken off the list and added she will reintroduce legislation to redesignate the regime as a state sponsor of terrorism as a means of putting more pressure on Pyongyang. The White House is taking a cautious stance, saying such a move requires a very specific technical justification. However, the U.S. State Department said the new executive order is the first aspect of Washington's response, noting there are ongoing discussions about other options. Analysts say the heightened tensions between the U.S. and North Korea will not affect the new momentum between the two Koreas for now.
Relations between North Korea and the United States were bad before South Korea proposed inter-Korean talks. Since both Koreas agree on the need for dialogue and the leaders have shown a willingness, I expect North Korea to make a counter-proposal for talks in the near future.
But should Pyongyang launch a violent protest, analysts expect discussions on additional U.S. sanctions to expand and warn those tensions could quickly trickle through to the Korean peninsula. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And a top U.S. security expert says Washington's new sanctions against the North over the recent Sony hacking will not have much of an impact on prospects for inter-Korean talks. Speaking to reporters after a seminar in Washington, Victor Cha, chief Korea analyst at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, said the U.S. supports inter-Korean dialogue in the sense that Pyongyang gets the chance to deliver its message to the South directly. He also warned South Korea and the United States to brace themselves for nuclear and ballistic missile tests by North Korea this year. According to Cha, the test could demonstrate Pyongyang's crossing of a new technology threshold, such as a uranium-based nuclear test. And in other news, global oil prices continue to nosedive starting the first full week of 2015, with fresh lows not seen in more than 5 years. This, of course, is sending shockwave across global stock markets. Kim Min-ji reports.
New year, same situation. Global crude prices plummeted to their lowest level since the spring of 2009 on Monday as concerns of oversupplies deepen. U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate oil fell 5% to finish at just over $50 per barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. It even dipped below the symbolic threshold of $50 at one point, a level unseen since April 2009. Benchmark Brent crude also shed about 6% to around $53 a barrel. The latest dip in oil prices also sent shockwaves to global stock markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell more than 330 points, or 1.9%, as investors broadly sold off energy stocks. The S&P 500 shed 1.8%. Crude prices have been on a downward spiral since June, losing more than half of their value. Investors fear that the global supply glut, coupled with weak demand, could push prices down further. OPEC countries have only shown a stronger resolve to raise production in a fight to protect their global market share against shale production in the United States. Recent data also shows that Russian oil outputs have hit post-Soviet records, while Iraqi exports are at their highest since the 1980s. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, after 4 straight months of decline, Korea's foreign exchange reserves bounced back in December. According to data released by the Bank of Korea, foreign currency reserves reached over $363 billion at the end of last month. That's up $500 million from the previous month. The central bank attributed the increase to profits derived from investments in financial products, including asset management gains. In the 4-month period through the end of November, the weakening euro and repayment of foreign exchange stabilization bonds caused reserves to contract. Samsung Electronics has ranked second in the world in terms of R&D spending for the second year in a row. The Korea Institute of Science and Technology Evaluation and Planning says Samsung poured $12 billion into research and development in 2013. And it was citing figures filed by the European Commission. German automaker Volkswagen topped the list at $14 billion. Microsoft and Intel came in at 3rd and 4th, respectively. Now, 3 Korean firms ranked in the top 100. LG Electronics was 49th on the list, while Hyundai Motors scraped in at 99th. Now, it's news you never want to hear as a driver. Your car is being recalled and needs to go back to the service centre. Well, this was exactly what the owners of more than 750,000 cars, homemade and imported, had to go through last year in Korea alone. And according to the Korea Transportation Safety Authority, While that figure might seem rather large, it's actually well below the number of vehicles that were recalled in 2013, when it stood at more than 1 million. That said, the number of recalled imported cars jumped from 55,000 in 2013 to more than 120,000 last year. Officials attribute that to the rising number of imported cars you see on the streets here in Korea and tougher recall measures enforced in the US and Europe. Now, 5 nations have raised objections at the World Trade Organization about Korea's increased tariffs on imported rice. The United States, China, Australia, Thailand and Vietnam have taken issue with the steps taken by Korea to liberalize its rice market in recent months. After a 20-year grace period, Korea made the shift starting this year, setting a rather startling tariff of 513% on rice imports that exceed the annual quota, which currently stands at just over 400,000 tons. Responding to the criticism, Korea's ambassador to the WTO, Chae Sok-young, said the Korean government would negotiate with each of the 5 countries to keep the tariff rate where it is, since it's designed to protect the domestic rice industry.
Let's now get a check on some of the other global headlines we're following this hour with our Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Yes, Eunice, there's a bit of hope today as recovery teams resume their search for the missing AirAsia flight 8501, as one Indonesian captain, we're hearing, indicated that his crew may have located the tail of this airliner that could also hold the key to this mystery, perhaps the black box.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. That's still in the process of being confirmed by Indonesia's authorities. But if it is true that the search effort is closer to the black box, they could also be closer to figuring out why the Singapore-bound plane crashed into the Java Sea days before New Year's on December 28th. Connie Kim has this story.
After days of search operations, an Indonesian vessel has found what could hold the key to discovering what caused the AirAsia flight 8501 to crash into the Java Sea. At a news conference Monday, the captain of a patrol vessel said they found what is most likely the tail of the jetliner. Now, the find could be crucial as the tail end of the aircraft contained the black box voice and data recorders. However, Indonesia's chief of search and rescue, Bambang Solistio, did not confirm the discovery. As for the probe on land, Indonesia has slapped sanctions on officials that allowed Flight 8501 to depart from Surabaya Airport in Indonesia on that fateful Sunday. The airliner was not permitted to fly on Sundays, but investigators say aviation officials allowed the flight to take off anyway. AirAsia has been banned from flying between Surabaya to Singapore while the investigation is underway. Search operations resumed Monday. Sonar equipment has been deployed underwater, and authorities have widened their search area off of Borneo Island with a multinational team of more than 40 vessels in the skies and in the seas. 37 bodies have been recovered from Java Sea so far, and 13 have been identified. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
To other news now, the United Nations is expressing concern over a recent move by Lebanon to require visas for refugees from Syria. Before the new measures, Syrians fleeing the unrest in their country were allowed access to the neighboring state for up to 6 months, but now they will need to fulfill set criteria at the border to be granted a visa. On Monday, Lebanon's interior minister explained his country had simply reached capacity for hosting the displaced, saying his country has already shouldered more than 1 million Syrian refugees. The UN says it wants Beirut to clear up whether the most vulnerable refugees will still be allowed safe haven in Lebanon. Jury selection has begun in Boston, USA, in the trial of the 21-year-old suspect accused of detonating a pair of deadly homemade bombs at the Boston Marathon in the spring of 2013. Johar Tsarnaev faces the death penalty for killing 3 people and injuring more than 260 others in that attack near the finish line. He has pled not guilty to all 30 charges against him. His brother Tamerlan Tsarnaev was killed days after the bombing in a police shootout. The jury selection phase is expected to take weeks. A judge will select 12 jurors and 6 alternates from a pool of 1,200 people. Prince Harry could be in line to become the first royal in the United Kingdom to become a general. The Daily Star reports the 30-year-old has passed all required tests to be promoted to major from his current post as captain and could take up the role of lieutenant colonel by the year 2023. The newspaper says he's being primed to be a future commander of the Household Cavalry, the Queen's favorite regiment. He reportedly told colleagues he would be honored to be trusted with that role.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Foot and mouth disease has made an unwanted reappearance in Korea with dozens of confirmed cases in pigs since the first case was reported about a month ago. Now, the disease may have made the jump to cows now, with a farm in Gyeonggi-do province reporting one of its animals has been displaying symptoms. Park Ji-won tells us more.
It was a nightmare for livestock farmers. More than 3 million animals, mostly pigs, were culled nationwide when the worst foot and mouth disease epidemic in Korea's history broke out in late 2010. Fast forward more than 4 years, and fears are rising again, with more than 30 confirmed cases of the disease in the space of a few weeks, since the first case was confirmed in Chungcheongbuk-do province earlier last month. And in a worrying new turn, a cow at a small cattle farm in Arirang, some 80 kilometers south of Seoul, has been showing symptoms of FMD. It's the first suspected case of the disease in cattle since this outbreak began, and the Agriculture Ministry says tests are underway. Arirang is famous for its livestock industry, with some 400,000 cattle and pigs at more than 1,000 farms. So far, 32 cases of foot and mouth disease in pigs have been confirmed, and more than 26,000 have been culled. Quarantine authorities say the spread of the disease will not be as severe as the previous outbreak due to an improved vaccination program. That said, there are fears FMD could spread to some farms that haven't been visited yet. Critics have accused the government of reacting slowly to the first case. While the Agriculture Ministry is expanding vaccinations to more livestock, it also plans to sterilize every slaughterhouse and all livestock-related vehicles from Wednesday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Smokers all over Korea are reeling from the recent hike in cigarette prices, but perhaps those most affected are men serving their compulsory military duty. Given their very low paychecks, the almost doubling in price is going to make it hard for them to continue lighting up, and that is something the military welcomes. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Many Korean men start smoking or increase their tobacco consumption during their 2-year mandatory military service. But the recent cigarette price hike is likely to give them pause. With the average price of a pack up roughly $2 to about $4 now, it's become a much pricier habit, especially when you consider that a private's monthly paycheck comes to less than $110. That means, if a private were to smoke a pack a day, he will use up all of his paycheck before the month ends. Up until 2005, the Korean military provided each serviceman with 15 packs a month free of charge. That total gradually decreased over the next 4 years until 2009. when the free pack policy was phased out completely. The smoking rate in the military has slowly declined over that time as well, from roughly 60% in 2005 to about 50% in 2009, and it's been edging down ever since. The military hopes to see the smoking rate dip below 30% as a result of this month's nationwide cigarette price hike. To nudge the cadets in the right direction, the Korean military set up clinics that encourage cadets to quit smoking.
After the price hike, several units requested that we open smoking clinics. The cadets have been very eager to take part.
That eagerness has taken the form of cadets enrolling in educational classes and using nicotine patches, with the pledge to quit smoking once and for all. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, the political scandal that's been grabbing all the headlines in Korea over recent weeks now appears to have really fallen by the wayside. The prosecution's preliminary results have determined what they found in recently leaked presidential documents was in actual fact false. Gwon So-ah has all the details.
Prosecutors have indicted a former presidential secretary on charges that he had ordered a leak of confidential documents from the presidential office. They found the documents to be fake.
We have conducted a broad investigation and found the documents to be false.
The scandal dates back to November with a local report alleging that President Park Geun-hye's former aide Chung Yun-hye held secret meetings with presidential secretaries seeking to drive out the current presidential chief of staff. Prosecutors say the meetings never happened. The incident has stirred up the political arena in recent weeks and dragged down President Park's approval ratings as it aroused criticism from the public who want more transparency at the presidential office. And over the prosecution's preliminary announcement on Monday, Korea's rival political parties continued with their clash. The ruling party said the suspicions were absurd to begin with.
This is a breach of code of conduct that involved unverified information reported in a presidential document which led to chaos.
The main opposition party said no one will trust the probe's conclusion, calling for a special investigation into the case.
The prosecution has come up with a conclusion customized to the presidential office. The truth hasn't been revealed.
The presidential office of Cheongwade says it won't be making an official comment on the prosecution's findings. Gwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, a diplomatic row between Seoul and Beijing could be brewing after Chinese authorities waited almost 1 week to notify Seoul that a Korean national had been executed in China for drug-related offences. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Korea's foreign ministry said Beijing notified it on Monday that a Korean man with a family name Kim was executed for drug-related offenses. Word came 6 days after the death sentence was administered. Beijing said the late notice was due to year-end administrative delays. Ministry officials called the execution incomprehensible given that they had repeatedly asked China for clemency on Kim's behalf. The ministry said it regrets the execution took place despite numerous requests to Beijing to refrain from going through with the execution. It added that it plans to boost cooperation with related countries to further prevent Korean citizens from being involved in drug-related crimes. Kim's execution has called into question the effectiveness of a Council pact between Korea and China that was signed in July and awaits ratification in Korea. Under the pact, the two sides agreed to notify the other within 4 days when a national of that country is held into custody and immediately if it involves a death sentence. This is not the first time a Korean national has been executed for drug-related offenses in China. In August last year, 2 Koreans were executed for smuggling and trading drugs. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Well, it's Sohan today in Korea, according to the solar calendar, which is supposed to mark the height of the winter cold. And wouldn't you know it, it has gotten quite a bit colder today. And unlike yesterday, when the high reached almost 8 degrees Celsius in Seoul, temperatures will remain on the freezing side throughout the day in the capital, and it should get colder as the week moves along. And strong gusty winds will blow in as well, bringing down the sensory temperatures. So bundle up, although the skies will remain clear all day long. And here are the readings for today. Now, the daytime high in the capital will only make it to -1, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 7 and 6, and Busan will reach 10 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will see a high of 9, while Daejeon and Dokdo will peak at 2 and 7 respectively. Now, this cold snap will be short-lived, thankfully, as things will get mild again just in time for the weekend. Well, that's all I have for you today, and let's send it back to Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Well, thank you, Chian, for the weather update. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Yes, and Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Wednesday. So until then, goodbye.